Welcome to a new series of Creating Miah. It has been at least a year or two, maybe. I think the last time we did a Creating Miah was a recap of year 2. I don't have official dates. I've messed everything up. We killed Creating Miah, and we killed the website, not Miah, yet. And so we don't have exact dates of when anything was published. All the titles are gone. The feed is a mess, but we're back. I ran into Miah the other night at a Rupert's Kids fundraiser, and she said something that I had been thinking about as well, which is we need to keep doing Creating Miah. There was a period of time where Miah was, let's say, emotional and did not want to be associated with anything trans within the movement, and she and I were fighting, as we have done so often over the last 7 years, and said, take my name off your website.
I don't sound like that. Fuck you.
And I did, because I was like, you know what? This bitch is crazy. My name is attached to her. She's going to get involved in some terrorist shit, and then I'm going to go down with the ship, so I'm taking everything off. And she wanted me to anyways, but Creating Miah is by far I've done several different podcasts over the time period, including if you're listening in the We Are Libertarians feed. We did Creating Miah about Miah's transition from male to female, and it documented essentially the first 2 years, starting from, I think, a year out, basically from year 1 to 2 is when we recorded it from your transition. You're now just about to celebrate your 4th anniversary of coming out. And what it was like from every aspect, from your family to your wife, Emily, to my perspective as one of your best friends who's a Christian conservative.
Listener questions.
So it was really a life-changing podcast for me. You say you still get a lot of comments about it all the time.
Yeah, no, I out of all the podcasts, that's the only one that seems to ever affected or reached anybody.
Right.
With any substantial meaning. I mean, politics is politics. I mean,
right.
It's whatever. That's a whole nother thing. But that actually meant something. That actually, I know people that have helped other people because they'd heard that podcast in the first place.
Right. We're periscoping this, and Mittens is putting her asshole on the camera right now.
Gotta have kitty butthole, you know.
It's the ultimate sign of affection. You can watch that video at our YouTube page at We're Libertarians. So if I've been saying to my girlfriend Emily, you know, you really should hear this. This is really an awesome podcast. But we had taken the feed down. I still had all the audio. I just had taken it out of the feed. And I didn't ask Miah. I put it back up in iTunes and Google Play and Stitcher and TuneIn and everything last weekend. Because I said, you know what? If she gets mad, I don't give a fuck. It's my content. I own it. And so I did it. And lo and behold, I ran into her Friday night. And she said, you know, I really want to do another Creating Miah. And people liked it and blah, blah, blah. So you can now subscribe to Creating Miah, hear the past episodes, hear the future episodes at wearelibertarians.com. And this is a listener-supported radio network this show's brought to you by We Are Libertarians, and if you feel so inclined, please donate at wearelibertarians.com. We'll kind of give a recap for people, because a lot of people may not. We have a lot of new listeners since the last time you were on We Are Libertarians, since we recorded the bulk of Creating Miah in 2013. So why don't you reintroduce yourself a little bit and kind of talk about not just who you are, what you believe, but also about your transition.
Well, that's kind of hard to do right now, because I guess I'll just try what I can with it. So back, was it 2012? Mm-hmm. It was during the Rupert's campaign, Rupert for Governor campaign. I believe it was, I'm horrible with dates, leap years, March 15th, I believe, or 16th. I get those confused. Ides of March,
Ides of March is the 15th.
Yeah, Tu Brute or whatever.
Right.
So I think it was like the 16th. And we talked about before, we've mentioned it, if anyone goes back and listens to the old episodes, that we talked about making it Facebook official.
Yeah.
is that's when I came out to the world and put it all out there and was like, this is what's going on. And it ended poorly.
It did?
Well, I mean, it didn't end poorly, but like there was some backlash. There was a lot of problems, and we've talked about that in the past episodes about how there was some negative reactions from some people.
Well, of course. I mean, anytime you're in politics, politics is all about perception, and you want to be appealing to as many people as possible. And to be quite frank, especially 4 years ago, being trans didn't appeal to a lot of people. I think the environment is much better.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
We were trendsetters when we did this podcast 3 years ago.
Well, I remember we looked up if there's any other. There was two. I think it was Transponder, and then there was another one that was inactive.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Right.
And there was nothing else out there.
And definitely nothing in terms of the journey that you go on when you transition. It was all about, I'm trans, let's talk about pop culture. So, yeah, I mean, it really was not. I took personally a lot of heat for hosting the podcast because, you believe in Jesus. Why would you do that? I said, well, I think Jesus would want me to understand one of my best friends. I don't think, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And it helped me grow as a person. I mean, a lot of the Chris Spangle that you are seeing on this show and online, where I am saying exactly what I think and who I am and blah, 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 not worrying about the consequences, comes from Miah. I am the monster that Miah created. So she taught me social terrorism at its finest. But, yeah, so we've kind of talked about, when did you exactly know that you weren't meant to be a man?
The feeling versus the actual understanding of the feeling were two different times. When I was a kid, I knew I was different. We'd had my father and my stepmother, who was basically my mother, on the show, and they knew there was. And they my dad was born in '53, and so he doesn't. He wasn't real privy on trans people, or what all that meant, and what it was like to have a kid that might be trans, and he knew early on. I knew very early on in my childhood that, something was different. Didn't have any idea. Didn't know what it meant. It's not like I had a lot of friends back then that I could talk to and understand things with.
Right.
But right about puberty is when it really sank in that I was growing increasingly disgusted with looking at myself and seeing myself and having the body I had. And but then I buried it all, like
Right.
some people do, and especially depending on what time period you're born in, you really have to do, and just kind of went on with it and went on with life and hid myself. And
you were one of the most masculine men, and you're a very good-looking man. I mean, you were very attractive. I mean, I'm not gay, but had I been gay, I might have given you a shot. But you were very masculine. You went into the Air Force. You can fix anything. You did heating and air conditioning. Your hands are black and rough. At least they were then. Now they're soft and pretty. And, I was like, oh, but you were so angry. You were just the most angry. You were the angriest person I knew. And I can tell you, after 9 months of therapy and really working on my own issues and getting in touch with human beings, all follow the same script. We're not little special snowflakes that are all different and unique. When you have something that you're deeply ashamed of, or something that you deeply fear, or a traumatic past that you've never opened up and talked about and said something out loud, and you're not allowed to be your true self, that manifests in your thinking, and it leaks out in other ways. And you leaked out with violence. You were angry at society that you couldn't be who you truly were. You were angry at your family. You were angry at yourself. And you took it out on me and Evan and everybody else that was around you. And you, when I saw you Friday night, were the happiest I've ever seen you. I mean, so I think, are you the happiest that you've ever been?
yeah, I can say that right now. That yeah. You would ask me that 3 weeks ago, I might have had a different answer. But now, yeah, I'm a lot of things. It's taken 4 years to fully realize some things and to stop fighting things. And I think it's had a lot to do with the quiet I last year, fall time or whatever, I pushed a lot of people away. And I've been hanging out with you. I haven't been really talking to anybody. I pushed away Harry. I pushed away Greg, everybody.
Yeah.
And I was very confused. And it was a lack of communication. It was this, like a lack of this podcast. The podcast, and even just talking to people about it and being on this show was a huge, huge thing. And that's why I think we're back here now, is that there's more problems and struggles and things that need to be talked about. It's not we left the picture incomplete.
Yeah.
And learning to get rid of that anger. And I've still been carrying it. And so when you saw me Friday night, you saw me without anger.
Right, which is the first time ever. And I don't mean that. I don't mean that to be funny. I mean that to be the truth. I mean it's your image that you have crafted. And this chart over here is something that comes from my therapy, and it's the cycle of self-abuse in others. And it starts with a traumatic event or a hidden shameful secret that you keep it out of. You don't share out of fear. And when you do that, it packs into your lizard brain, the emotional part of your brain, and it starts to affect your cognitive behavior. And you start to make choices. The next step is then you begin to isolate. You begin to, act out and try and push people away. And then, because you've done that, you start to feel guilty and feel more shame, and you start to harm yourself. My particular ways that I harm myself are I'm shitty with money, I eat way too much, I don't exercise, and then you start to act normal. You start to pretend like you're normal and everything's okay, but you're just a mess and you're not okay. But you've got it handled, and then you become you put yourself in this victim stance where it's everybody else's problem. You don't see yourself. You don't become self-actualized, and you spend a lot of time down at the bottom of that cycle, 5 years ago, pitying yourself, because the bottom of that is, between acting out and then harmful behavior to yourself is the pity party. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be this way. My life should go a different way. I should be something different. It's everybody else's fault, and you have, over the last 4 years, talk about the process of kind of getting yourself out of that cycle of self-abuse and others. I mean, I'm always going to struggle with that. I'm always going to be aggressive socially to try and push people away. I'm always going to be bad with money, and but I work hard at it. Like, what are some of the ways that are you aware of what you're doing now, and that is part of it?
Yeah, it's the word, and some people, if they're listening to this, are going to be real tired of hearing this word, communication. It's even communication within yourself. I mean, talking to yourself isn't such a bad thing. Just finding your thoughts and finding And the problem is, I spent the first 25 years of my life attaching hatred and anger and rage to every thought I had. Everything ended up with one of those emotions or extreme depression. There was no in between. There was no happiness. There's no positive. There was nothing. And there's little glimpses of it, but it was figuring out a way to just little bit by little bit attach some positive thoughts or feel other emotions, maybe even sadness or happiness or something. Attach it to all of your thoughts. Attach it to how you feel about yourself, and it's a very rough cycle to break. Doing it for years and then going through some of your early formative years being that way, and then young adulthood and early adulthood, and all of those processes, you're supposed to be finding yourself, so you're supposed to be experimenting and everything else, and until I was 25, until I was midway through my 20s, I hadn't changed anything. I'd become a million different people. I'd changed personas. I'd changed everything, but I'd never changed the idea of it, allowing myself to feel different emotions than just hatred and anger. Mm-hmm. And that's why I got into politics, because what is politics other than hate? There is no positive in politics when it really comes down to it. It's all about crushing the other guy or winning no matter the cost, and you're right, you're wrong, this is right, that's wrong. And
ultimately, so many of the solutions in politics are about violence. It's how do you force somebody to do something because you think it's right.
Right. And that added to the unhealthy mindset I had. And just recently, they say it sometimes takes a new set of eyes to see a problem, or it takes, like you said, a big event, a big connection or something to maybe snap you out of something.
Yeah, sometimes you build a puzzle, but it isn't. You have things kind of put together in your mind, but you just don't. Things don't click all together, and then you get that final piece, and something happens, and you go, "Oh, this is everything that I've been thinking. Now it makes sense."
And I've been taking advice from people, from you, from my parents, from my wife, from all these friends over the years, and they open up and they talk to me and they show this caring. I mean, for goodness sakes, I hope he ever hears this, but Ron Sinkush, I never really knew that man from Adam. And I know over the years he's sent me messages, he's sent me, message of support and stuff, and none of that sank in.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spent, I'm exhausted right now. I am drained to the bone.
Right.
Emotionally. And it's because I've just in the past couple of weeks had all of those things of advice, all these thoughts flooding in. And everything else makes a little bit more sense now that all this advice and all the things I've done, I feel a lot of shame.
Mm-hmm.
It's not consuming me, but I feel a lot of shame about how I've treated people, and someone
you feel embarrassed.
Yeah, I feel really stupid that here I am always putting off this front that I'm smart and I have a grasp on things, and I didn't myself.
Right.
It came in from outside sources and went right back out, and it never took a time to stop and affect me.
Mm-hmm.
And it took this is all very perfect timing because it took somebody trying to self-sabotage their relationship with me last night to truly feel what it's like to be on the other end of that. I've self-sabotaged everything.
You have literally taken everybody that has supported you and pushed them away.
Right.
You have broken every relationship that is close to you over the last couple years.
Right.
And a lot of that is self-hatred. Sometimes we don't think that we are good enough to have the great people in our lives. I mean, you go, who am I to have such wonderful people supporting me? Don't they realize what a piece of shit I am?
Right.
And with you and I, it just got to a point where because I got divorced 2 years ago, and I have spent so much time trying to recover from that. And I love chaos. I realize now I need chaos in my life because that's what I'm most comfortable with because of the way that I grew up. And it helps me kind of exercise some of my past demons. And so when I was married and everything was stable, I could handle you and enjoyed having you around because you were a chaotic person. I loved the drama. But then when I had my own actual chaos and drama, I couldn't handle yours. And, I just was very sensitive and couldn't take people being mean to me because I was I was trying to stay alive. I was very suicidal over the last couple of years. And, it just got to a point where I go, you know what? I love Miah and I wish her the best, but I can't be around her. I just cannot handle that. And I've seen you push, somebody like Rupert, who has been your biggest champion. You've done everything you can in that relationship to try and blow that up and get him to do what you think he ought to do, which is say, you're not good enough to be around me, get out of here.
Yeah.
And no matter how many times somebody like Rupert or myself will say, give you another chance, you've pushed it to the point where you go, listen, it's not me, it's her. And it doesn't mean that relationships are never permanently broken.
No, they're not.
Ever. I mean, there's never... that's catastrophic thinking that you can wreck a relationship forever. But, it was good. I was looking forward to seeing you Friday because, I'm at a more stable point in my life, and whatever you've got going on in your life, I now can separate myself and detach from it and go, that's your deal. You can cuss at me, hit me, whatever you want, but I know that I didn't do anything wrong.
I can hit you?
No, let's follow the NAP around here. But, yeah, you have been pushing every single person in your life out of your life for really forever.
Yeah.
But, when it finally hit with Rupert, I was just like, geez, this guy is giving her a job. Sorry, her a job, and I still sometimes mess the pronouns up even after 4 years later. I don't know, it's habit, but you just kind of go, what the fuck, man? What is she doing? I mean, so can you kind of talk about that? I mean, do you realize that's what you're doing? Do you recognize that?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's a defense mechanism. It's a wall. And one of the things is that, I mean, you've dealt with suicide, and the way depression and suicide works in your brain is it will make you do things to make you unhappy so that you want to kill yourself.
Yeah, to prove yourself right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had a friend recently tell me that being right's not always the most important thing.
Yep.
And that's really hard for me to admit, but she was right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, out of the thousands of people that told me that over the years that it took that, but...
I mean, haven't you listened to Dr. Phil when he said, listen, you're a rat fighter?
Dr. Phil.
Watch more Dr. Phil.
I can watch more Dr. Phil, but no, I mean... I've seen it, but then you watch yourself do it. Like you're not doing it, you're watching yourself do it. And then you look back and you're like, oh my God. Then you're too ashamed to apologize. You're too ashamed to come back to the table and go, I messed up.
Yeah.
And I want to put this on a recording. I apologize to you, to Rupert, to everyone I've ever done that to. That is, now that I've seen it happen to me in this state of mind where I can understand it, that's got to be the most god-awful thing ever because it doesn't make sense. What I was saying to people made no sense. There was no logic or reason behind it. It was all to destroy myself.
Right.
And I didn't want to destroy the friendships. I didn't want to destroy those people. I was looking for a whole bunch of good reasons to go home and stick a gun in my mouth and pull the trigger finally.
Well, there's also a little bit of validating your incorrect beliefs about yourself. If you can get the people that you love the most to abandon you, then it gives you permission to harm yourself more.
Right. But there's a difference between 5 years ago and 4 years ago on that line of thinking is that coming out, I felt validated my existence a little bit more. I felt maybe that just by coming out, everything was going to change. But then I got scared. I'd built so much of my life, and I had these friends, and I had all this stuff and what people thought about me, and I thought people liked me because of the reasons I made up and I put out there. I was wrong, but... it was, now I'm afraid of who am I? I didn't know who Miah was. I knew who the other person was, but I still didn't really know who Miah was. I'd been so many people over the years, and it's still a struggle 4 years later, mainly because I ignored the problem, but it's different because I was scared of losing some parts of me. I was like, I don't know going forward what's going to stay and what's going to go. And there's some things I like. There's some things I care about. Now one of the reasons I didn't like to have friends is the whole I don't care about life aspect of I have nothing to lose, so I can go out and do protests and get in cops' faces and spit in their faces while having a gun on me. I can travel around the country when I used to go to CPAC and DC and to get into trouble everywhere. And, there's been a lot of people, yourself included, that you had a friend in need, that it was a dangerous situation. You needed somebody maybe to do something dangerous and possibly life imprisonment. And I've always been scared that if I start making connections and I start really enjoying and loving life, that I can't do that anymore because I have more to lose. But
part of your identity has always been that you're a dangerous person, and giving that up, you lose that piece of your identity. Yeah.
And I become vulnerable, and I appear vulnerable. And it's funny saying that now on this podcast is that I thought I had to make sure that I never showed weakness to people, that I had to be everyone's rock. Everyone should be able to come to me for advice and help.
Yeah.
And I never asked anybody else for any because I didn't want to look vulnerable and weak. And that was a mistake. Is that, not everyone's infallible. Not everyone, I see a lot of other trans people too that take up kind of the same mantra of I'm invincible and I'm attacking the world and what is it? Windmills.
It's pretending normal.
Yeah.
It's the top of that victim cycle that you see people like that and you just go, you're victimized by everybody around you. You're angry at the world. and you're pretending like everything's okay, and it's okay to admit that everything is not fine.
Right. And I think there needs to be a lot more of that. And you look at like Tumblr and the echo chambers, and that's what we've created for ourselves, us that have had dealing with depression. We create these little echo chambers inside of our own head that aren't healthy.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of these other people, and that's kind of where I had to falling out with a lot of the trans community. I'm like, I don't want to have any trans friends. I don't want to deal with any of you people. Because everyone's so worried about bringing everyone up and not saying anything negative that it's this passive-aggressive society. And without conflict, there can be no learning. There can't be any growth. And it's being trapped inside my head with that same thing, that same idea of, I just need to be validated. I know I don't. I might not be valid right now. I might be wrong. I might need really shoved around a little bit to understand who I am. And
yeah, relationships are like rock tumblers. You have rocks. I mean, and so that's why sometimes people isolate and withdraw, is because they're having very sensitive, big emotions, and so they're feeling a lot. And the less impact you have with other people, the easier it is to deal with that, because you're just kind of by yourself. But the problem is that you have to talk about everything. You have to communicate with people, because that's the way that you unpack that junk in the back of your head. It's like once you stop doing the podcast, that stops the therapy for you. Right. I go to therapy because I talk that stuff out. I realize I have a lot of resentment and anger towards the breakdown with my parents when they divorced, when they were 15, and the stuff that happened after that. But it's not right for me to be resentful and angry and take that out on my girlfriend or my friends or my coworkers, and you got to deal with that misplaced anger and talk it out. Talking it out is how you become a smoother rock. Relationships are about not conflict, but constantly rubbing against other people to smooth out your faults. Right. And when you don't have self-esteem and you don't love yourself and you don't know who you are exactly, that feels really hurtful and sensitive and vulnerable. And the work of Brené Brown has really helped me. The Gifts of Imperfection has taught me how to be vulnerable and just be authentic in who I am, be open and honest, and tell the truth. And the last year has been the best year of my life, because as I've done that, I love myself more, because all of my friends accept me for who I truly am. And I'm not exhausted all the time by trying to project this fake personality. Do you know how tiring it is, and maybe you can talk about this, of practicing your authentic. Really, the book that changed my life last July, was Scary Close by Donald Miller, about codependency and faking authenticity.
Yeah,
here's a guy who is known for writing books from an authentic perspective, and he's like, it was all fake, it was all phony, it was all a character that I crafted in my head, and I was miserable all the time because I was pretending to be Donald Miller. And you, for a long time, I mean, talk about how hard it is to pretend to be something you're not.
It's consuming. It consumes every part of you, and it ends up affecting every aspect of your life, because you spend so much time second-guessing yourself and questioning things and micro-analyzing things of how everyone else sees you, and you never, ever take a look at yourself. And you falter in everything, because instead of just doing things and taking actions, and like, I have skill sets. I can learn how to do a lot of different things, but I've always been so worried about what people think about that. Would I actually be any good? People think I'm good at this now, so why would I try to get something, good at something else when I could possibly fail? And it's lonely. It traps you. And then that's all you can think about, is making sure that somebody out there likes you. You're addicted to the Facebook likes. And I know a lot of people have been talking about that, and it's come up in different psychological journals and stuff, and it's so true. You get addicted that you can find these little cross sections of the population that like what you're putting out, and so you try to validate it through that. But then that gets wearing. Then you get tired of that because it's not real, and so you have to go to something else and start all over again. And I've honestly, I guess I've been being fake for most of the last 4 years too. That
even after you've been authentic, you still feel you feel. To me, the vibe that I get off of you now and Friday is that you're more comfortable with yourself and that you love yourself more and are more like, I know who I am now. I know, like, I still act out. I still do things where I desperately need the approval of my attachment figure, Emily, my girlfriend, and it causes problems. But it's an amazing feeling when I just 10 minutes pass and I go, listen, I'm sorry. Here's what I'm doing. I know I'm doing it. And she just goes, okay, and loves me for me, and I don't feel like I have to be a certain thing or do a certain thing or act a certain way to get her love. You know, where I felt that my whole life. I felt that I needed to be a certain way. I've felt that with my parents.
Yeah.
Like, I have to be and do certain things. So now I'm just in a relationship for the first time ever where I can just be myself and that person loves me unconditionally. And you are lucky to have that with your Emily, who is just the most accepting, open-minded, sweetest human being on the planet.
Who I've been apologizing to a lot lately.
Yeah, we can talk about that in a minute, but I want to hear how you got to a point. What techniques have you used to find self-acceptance for yourself and build your self-esteem?
Just, I call it brain dump, but I'm sure there's probably a better term for it. Is instead of questioning my thoughts and processing them and making sure that what I say is perfect, or I gauge the other person's response, what it might be, and try to predict where the conversation is going to go. Instead of like treat life as like a podcast where I'm trying to purposely rile people up so I can trap them in a conversation or something else, and I just let everything out. I just let everything out, and I don't care. I don't care what the consequences are of what I say, nothing. I just dump everything.
How do you learn to not care, though? And where do you dump it? Do you journal, or do you just put it on Facebook, or do you text people? Like,
I made a friend about a year ago on Facebook, a friend of a friend of a friend type thing, and she was having some trouble, or she wasn't having some trouble. She wanted to connect on being trans, and she was still very early on in it and everything else. And so we became friends. Then we became in real life friends. And then she's so positive. I tell her she's sickeningly positive. And she is. She's just this little ball of joy. And it took... Normally I hate that. I hate the idea of someone just being so positive all the time. And she wore on me, and she wore on me. And I think Emily picked up on the changes in me as well. And so I've created a support network without even knowing it. And both of them really started irritating the living crap out of me by asking me questions and talking to me. And I finally, it literally woke up one day and had felt feelings for this friend of mine that were unusual, were weird. I felt euphoric. I felt emotions in a physical sense, and
You were horny for this person?
No, not at all. It was, well, I wouldn't say not at all, but I mean, that was part of it. But I felt
you wanted to put it in this person's butt. Is that accurate?
No comment. I plead the fifth, but but no, I felt this connection. I had a brother when I was younger who tortured me, who abused me, who was an absolute horrible person. My biological birth giver and the person she was married to were horrible, horrible people. And I've spent my entire life pushing people away, but I felt this connection from this person. This person, it felt like they needed me. And I noticed that. And I don't know if I've ever noticed that before, other than like with Emily, but our situation's unique. Yeah, okay. But I felt this need, this connection that this person really liked me and needed our friendship. And I realized I needed theirs. And making that connection, having that connection now, I mean, I've been with Emily on and off for like 14, 15 years. Mm-hmm. It's weird to see that.
And
it's weird to...
What, 30? 28? 29?
I'll be 29 in like a month.
All right.
30. Oh, you bitch.
Trust me, when I just went back and listened to the first We're Libertarians episode, and I'm like, this is a podcast for people under 30. I'm like, fuck, I can't even be on my own podcast anymore. I'm 32 now.
Right.
I'm 32 and a half. So
you're old. But so I made this connection, and it woke parts of me I'd been hiding. I wanted to explore these things, and then when I talked to Emily about it a little bit, and I allowed myself to open up to her, I saw her light up. That I started talking to her again, and we've been through some rough times over the years, and especially since I came out, I've closed down parts of me, and I haven't been communicating that well. But she saw this spark, and we went with it, and so through talking with this stupid positive person and talking to Emily, they convinced me to just stop overthinking everything and just allow some things to happen. Basically go through puberty and first, and having all these thoughts and emotions and just let them happen. Flesh them out.
Should we schedule your quinceañera? When you become a young woman.
I'm going to hit you later today. By the end of the day, I'm still not adversarial towards the idea of hitting people, especially you. It gave me so much joy last time. So then something horrible happened. I had this friend come over, and we were going to talk about our feelings and about how things were progressing and things were different and weird. And I exploded. I self-sabotaged again, and that was wonderful. As horrible as that sounds, it was wonderful because I was in a mindset where I could understand what I was doing. I saw what I was doing it, and I instantly knew I regretted it.
Yeah, I've done that too, where you're self-sabotaging, and you're like for me, it's like getting off my diet and not exercising, and I'm sitting in the drive-thru getting my triple cheeseburger going, I should not be doing this, but I'm going to do it anyways. And I do this with Emily too. Yeah, I mean, it is funny. Once you become self-aware and you kind of work through this stuff, you still mess up.
Yeah.
But you have to learn to forgive yourself and love yourself enough to say, if I were my own best friend and they were saying, I messed up, what would you say? You'd say, just try again tomorrow.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we don't talk to ourselves like we're our own best friends. We say, this is why you should die because you're a big piece of shit,
Well,
So you self-sabotage with her.
I self-sabotaged, and I shut down, and I tried to rely on old ways. I tried to rely on this, what I consider safe and known. But this other person, I was trying to push away, was very, let's see here, needy.
Would you say needy or aggressively forgiving or
aggressively wanting me back?
Okay.
Didn't want to lose the friendship because I'd promised that we'd always stay friends no matter what happened. And, well, I lied, I guess, during that period of time. But she kept trying. She kept reaching out. And I talked to Emily, and I was talking out, and I was feeling things. I was going back to, that week or so of feeling these feelings was really great. And I didn't really like what I did with self-sabotaging. So treat it as a learning experience. I made a mistake. I'm going to admit my mistake and then move on and learn from it. Not bury it, not try to forget it, not try to just brush it on the table. Accept it.
Do the things
learn.
that were your former coping mechanisms.
Right.
Which I would say that, to be quite honest, some people, I mean, I'll just be real frank. You exhibited all the characteristics of a person with narcissistic personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
You were never wrong. It was all about you. It was all attention on you. And if anybody ever confronted you, you exploded in anger as a way to get them to shut up and stop hurting you. So it's good for you. I mean, so a person like that, and I'm not saying that you have that, you just, because I'm no doctor, but a person like that would have fear in admitting that they're wrong and not perfect.
Yeah.
How did you deal? You're one of the most fearless people I know, but in that situation, it's almost more frightening than anything else you've gone through, where you just start going, I'm wrong. How do you deal with that fear of that moment of the fear of allowing yourself to be emotionally vulnerable?
What's been allowing me to do this is that those moments of happiness, of joy and happiness, are worth so much. They're so amazing and good that they drown out the fear for me. It's still scary, and I hate the idea of admitting I'm wrong and admitting. I'm still struggling with the idea that if I admit that I'm wrong, it shows weakness. But it's balancing where you're vulnerable and where you're not. When it comes to politics and stuff and philosophy, well, you're supposed to argue from a point that you're right. That's how that works. But that doesn't work when it comes to talking about yourself, talking about feelings and connections with people. Things aren't black and white. Things take time. They take work. You're supposed to make mistakes and learn from them. And I guess that's it right there, is that I've made all these mistakes, but since I don't admit they're mistakes, I never learn from them.
Right.
And it makes me a very shallow.
Would you say you blamed the other people for those mistakes? You made the mistakes, but it's the other person's fault?
I don't think consciously, no. I always blame myself. It's because I didn't take control. No, I guess in the long run it is. I'm blaming them that, I should have been more in control and I should have been better, and just completely disregarding anyone else's skills or feelings or work or anything else. And so, yeah, I guess I was always blaming someone else.
Holy shit, did Miah just develop empathy in the last 6 months? What the fuck?
I've always had empathy. It's just, it's scary to care. I don't like loss. I don't finish books all the time. Movies and stuff I'll finish, but I don't like to finish anime. I won't watch like the last 2 episodes. I don't like things to end. It's scary. And I think that stems from a lot of bouts with suicide and not appreciating life. Mm-hmm. I don't like things to end, and so I also don't like them to start, because if they never start, they can never stop. And that's a horrible way to see the world. So, there's been so much. It's been a whirlwind of so many new things, and so many more things make sense. And I just want to run around to everybody and apologize.
What do it? What kind of timeline are we saying? And like, is this just happened like in the last week? Is this the last
2 weeks?
2 months?
2 weeks. Well, me and Emily ourselves have been developing things, and
what does that mean?
We've been trying to communicate a little bit more and trying to figure out some of our dynamics. And
last I heard, you two were apart.
No,
that you guys had broken up.
Oh, hell no!
Like, this was like a year ago or something.
No. Okay. Like a year ago, I destroyed a couple friendships with some mutual friends of ours, but no, I don't. Maybe I don't. Who knows what I posted on Facebook in a fit of rage? But
yeah.
No, we're still strong and going. But I've been ignoring a lot of pieces of my dysphoria, dealing with gender identity and everything else. And I've been ignoring a lot of that because it's difficult. It's hard. And closed off from the world, you can ignore it real easy because you're completely closed off from the world.
Right.
And, when I first came out, I was posting pictures all the time. I was always like trying to show off things and, let the world see me. And I've really cut back on that.
Yeah.
And because I've allowed myself to make this connection with this friend, and I get to see their dysphoria real up close and personal, see deep into who they are and how it affects them. It's showing me a lot of things I've been ignoring and putting off and not dealing with. And like I sit at home and I need more laser hair removal. I don't shave, and so then I see myself in a reflection somewhere, and I'm like, ew.
What I think a lot of the problem is, you expected your transition. You're handicapped because your wife Emily is Jessica Rabbit. She is like the ideal woman. And I think you thought that when you transitioned, you would just become I think you almost struggle with the fact that you're not the ideal version of society's view of a woman.
Right.
And like, let's be honest, you were a very hulking man. You were a linebacker on your football team. You've got broad shoulders.
Yeah.
You're a very strong person. You're physically probably one of the strongest people I know. And a lot of what we talked about in that first series was you trying to achieve society's view of what a woman should look like.
And I shot for that. I rode that pink cloud.
Right. Instead of just saying, I can just be who I am and fuck society's notions of what I ought to be, which was so funny because the thing you taught me more than anybody else is fuck the false constructs of society. And that's what the whole first series was. And it's almost like, looking back now that we're having this conversation, it's almost like all a falsehood.
And to a degree it was. It's like it works on a pendulum. Really, it does. I mean, I went from I'm too scared to find out who I am, so I'm just going to use what society says I should be. Mm-hmm. And that's what that was. Right. It was very scary thinking I'm going to transition, I'm going to be a woman, and people are going to find me attractive, and guys will always want to, stick their dick in me everywhere, and Emily's going to be just drooling all over me, and, Chris Spangle might want to hook up with me at some point in time because he's always lonely, and, but, I mean, you still get, second dibs on boobs, but...
Who's first?
Emily, of course.
All right, well, I'll be second.
I mean, she's paying for him, but... And then it turned... After a while, it turned into, this is too hard, this isn't really what I want, so I'm going to just be like a butch woman. Yeah, I'm going to be a butch woman, and right. I'm not going to care. I don't care. I did. And it's trying to find that balance and that swing of who am I and where's my balance? Who am I? Am I somewhere in between? I have, the contrast between this new friend I have. She's extremely feminine. She is just, she fell into it very naturally, and I'm kind of jealous and I'm kind of not because I see this very stark contrast. First, I can't really see this with Emily because she's extremely feminine, but she's also very strong, and I'm blinded by our relationship because of how long it's been going on. But this new person, this new friend of mine, and how open we've been with each other, it's let me see that here's the contrast. So I'm finding that I'm a mix. It's a spectrum, and I'm fully understanding that things are a spectrum, and you have to experiment, and you have to run around and do things, and maybe find out that that's stupid, you don't like that, or that's not you, and then move on to something else and find yourself. And I'm finding this balance now. It's all starting to click that I have a lot of masculine traits. Mm-hmm. I don't do a lot with my voice, and I don't really care because I have a hard enough time speaking most of the words I say anyway.
Yeah, so. I think if you will go back and listen to the first episode, I doubt there'd be much change in your voice, but right. I don't think that matters. So just to clarify, so cats, for instance, cats are the third most intelligent person, and the way that they bond with their humans is that cats see themselves as half cat, half human.
Right.
And they view us as half cat, half human. They have morphed us into a different species, essentially.
Right.
So are you saying that you're almost like an androgynous thing where you're kind of settling, saying, listen, I'm not going to be this ideal, I'm not going to be this ideal, I can just be my own ideal and everybody else can deal with it? Is that kind of what you're
kind of for? But I wouldn't use the word androgynous. It's being okay with, first off, it's a lot of unknown right now because I'm still trying to find out who I am and what's going to stay and what's going to go away. What habits, what personality traits I've developed over years have stuck, but aren't what I want, aren't who I really am, what I've just been holding on to because I'm scared to let them go. I'm scared of the changes.
And scared to lose that ability. That's how you coped.
Right.
That's how you coped for 25 years, 27 years at this point.
Yeah.
So it's hard to let that stuff go.
Right. And so trying to go through all that, and I like pretty stuff. I like I'm kind of in a tomboy mode right now but I'm also getting comfortable with how I am. I'm tall, I'm stocky, I'm never going to be this ideal woman-looking person or whatever. I've had a friend I've had on Facebook I've been following for a while, and she is gorgeous. She models, but she also goes to the gym and bulks. She works out bulk, and so she's ripped, but she's trans. And it's so that's cool.
So male to female, and then is building a male physique, but as a female,
she's building a normally considered masculine physique, but she's not. I mean, she's building it right where she's got the small waist and she looks very feminine, but she's built. She's a very strong woman,
right?
And she's super okay with it, and she models in very feminine clothing, but with these muscles and everything else. And it's kind of a neat contrast to see that like you said, physical strength is how a lot of people see me, and I'm okay with that because I like with this friend, and what I'm starting to understand from Emily and everything else is I am seen as a strong person, even when I'm being vulnerable, and that can convey strength as well. And while it's scary, it's just all the dynamics. And if I feel like an idiot for not having understood all these things over all these years and just sitting down and thinking about them and playing them out and not having these grandiose or maybe super negative expectations. It's when you're, especially if you're first coming out and you're trans, you shouldn't know anything. You shouldn't expect anything.
Yeah.
You can't know. You can't know anything. You have no idea how hormones are going to work. Half the crap they say about, you're going to be a cup size smaller than your family average and all that, none of that's really true. And we don't know. But then, now you see people like Caitlyn Jenner, bitch. You see Laverne Cox. You see Claire, or whatever her name is. You see all these beautiful people, these beautiful trans people. They're actresses and they're all over the place. But you know what? That's not the majority. The majority are going to be somewhere in between things. It depends on when you come out. Now older people that are in their 20s or 30s are seeing these kids getting on puberty blockers, and then when they hit 18, they get surgeries or they have everything, and they're beautiful, and they didn't have to go through puberty, and it's daunting. You're jealous, you're hated, you want to feel good for those people, and you're great for that. But then people look at you and go, "Why are you so ugly? Why do you still look like a dude?"
Yeah, but isn't that sort of like, I was watching the 11-something-63 show on Hulu yesterday about the time travel and Kennedy. James Franco's in it. Josh Duhamel is a character in it, and Josh is just like this perfect physical specimen of a man. And I'm sitting there with my 280-pound frame, fat and dumpy, can't grow a beard. I don't have the best voice, and I work in radio, and I get jealous of other people's voice, And I looked at him and I was like, why can't I be like that? Why can't I have that physique? And then I just remembered, it's like, does it really matter? It doesn't matter that is the view of masculinity in society. That's what quote-unquote women want. Because at the end of the day, I have a girlfriend that I love, that loves me, that we're both physically attracted to each other. There's somebody out there for everybody. And you get to keep those people in your life if you're an authentic person with self-esteem, you love yourself, and you're not pretending.
Right.
And that's why people are turned off by the bros. People who want to go and they try too hard to achieve something that is ridiculous. And women go through it. Women have it far worse than men in terms of what men view, because men are generally more awful than women in terms of dating and evaluating looks. I think everybody kind of has that body image struggle.
Right. But when it's such a large focus of your psyche,
and other people's perception, because once you transitioned, you're my transgender friend.
Right.
You're not my heating and air conditioning, or my friend that, you're always my angry friend, and then you became my angry transgender friend.
Right. And it's a weird place to be trapped in, and a lot of people want to. They have to get to that point that they can fully pass, and they go stealth, where no one ever knows they're trans, where they cut out friends that knew them beforehand or knew them transitioning, and they go stealth, they go quiet, they pass, and then they just fit in. But I think that can still be another form of trapping yourself. I know there's trans guys out there that end up they have to like sports, and they have to drink beer, and they have to say bro and dude all the time.
Could you not say trap, please? You're triggering me.
I'm gonna throw something at your head, man. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna
the first series. I was so worried about as the host of offending anybody in the trans community. I don't give a shit.
Fuck SJWs and all their bullshit and trigger warnings and everything else. Life sucks. Life's hard. We all want to die most of the time, and you know what? That's just life. But there's so many good moments, and I think what a lot of people, and it's hard, and it's not I don't want to say it with a broad stroke, but the journey of being trans is something special and unique. You get the chance to start life over again. You get the chance to rebuild. No matter how hard it is, you're almost getting a second chance. It's a struggle, and it's not going to be as good as maybe the potential of the first time, but and even right now in society with more acceptance than else, you're almost getting that pass, that chance to become who you are. You're getting forgiveness from most people out there are going to forgive you for your past transgressions as you transition, I think. A lot of people are more understanding and caring. And I mean, I know I've had thousands of death threats sent at me. I've had people attack me for this and everything else. I've also had people chase me down and want to have sex with me because they fetishize it. But I've also had so...
Did you?
I've also had a lot of people come to me and tell me that my struggles help them, or that they understand things, or like Carl, for instance, had to deal with I believe it was a friend of his, one of his kids at school that was having trouble, and because he had listened to this podcast and had known things, he was able to help them.
Right.
And that was me putting that out there, and that was this journey. And I think struggle is a very important part of life that not only helps you, but it helps everyone else around you. And that's why I went back to like the passive aggressive thing. There is no conflict in our society anymore. And so if we don't have conflict, we can't grow. And I see a lot of trans people having no conflict transitions.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. I tried to have a no conflict transition, and it was destroying me.
Right.
And I think there should be a lot of conflict. There should be...
I don't even think it has to be an angry conflict. I think what you're saying
No,
is...
it's like the base principle, what the idea of a conflict is.
Difficult where you are... I am such an advocate for open and honest discussion. Let's put out what the elephant in the room is and discuss it. Right. And then come to an understanding about it. That's so much of what we do in this podcast. And that was always kind of my message to you. It's like, just talk about it. You should talk to these. That's why we did this podcast in the first place, is that people are not going to have those deep conversations with their trans friend, but they have a million different questions. They want to ask about your genitals. They want to ask all that kind of stuff, and you're willing to talk about that. And part of it is because this is a safe space with you and I, where you and I are close friends, and we can. I'm not ashamed or embarrassed to ask you, like, what's going on with your dick?
Yeah,
like
a lot.
And I think people have those questions, and then they're not. But they rob themselves of what happens when you're authentic, open, and honest with your friends, and you admit that you're struggling, or you admit that you have questions, and admit that maybe you're not okay with it. You end up coming to a better understanding as long as you don't try and defend your ego and be defensive. And in the last year, especially the last 6 months, I went through a really tough breakup last June and was very depressed and just having a real hard time. And I just sort of developed this technique, and I just started being honest. And the biggest lie in our society is, I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah.
How are you doing? I'm good. And so when I felt sad or struggling or needed to talk, because I have a high bar, like I'm very extroverted, I have to talk my problems out. I have to get other people's perspectives. That's how I process things. I would message a friend and I'd say, "Hey, Naz, how are you doing?" "Good." "How are you doing?" "I'm awful." And a couple friends since then, since I've kind of started talking about this, have done this, and they've just told the truth. "I'm not okay. I need your help. I need to talk about this. I need to deal with this. I need your opinion." You can't be ruled by their opinions, but you do oftentimes, especially extroverts, you've got to process stuff externally.
Yeah.
Introverts take time to process stuff internally.
Well, it's not talking at or being talked to. It's communication. It's
exactly
the back and forth. It's the fleshing out of ideas.
Like, what is your opinion of this? Asking questions instead of, and I struggle with this. When someone tells me they're having a problem, I try to ask them a question and get them to talk more about what they're having a problem with.
Right.
And ask a series of questions, as opposed to me just saying, "Well, here's how you deal with this." Because what they need is for you to hear them and understand them and accept them.
Yeah.
They don't need your opinion and your advice. They need togetherness, because we are social creatures.
Yeah.
And again, Dr. Brene Brown has helped a lot with that. I can't recommend her stuff highly enough. But, if you're struggling, if you're having a hard time, use that technique. Go out and ask a friend that you trust. "Miah, how are you doing today?" "I'm okay. How are you?" "I'm not good. Can we talk?" And that is sometimes really difficult, but you build it up in your head and you think this person's going to judge me, I'm crazy, I'm alone, nobody's ever had these thoughts. But again, you're not. Everybody goes through the same patterns. We're the same, just like you can identify patterns of cats or dogs.
Yeah.
And here, if you do this, there's this reaction. If you isolate yourself, if you don't talk to people about your problems, if you don't ask for help, you're going to end up like Miah the last 4 years. But when you start opening up and being vulnerable and talking about your problems and asking for help and going to therapists and reading books, you're going to get what Miah's getting right now. You're going to get a greater sense of belonging, and you're going to feel accepted, and your relationships will be so much better and stronger because you're having those conversations.
Right.
And so while this podcast has been helpful, I would encourage everybody, and I'm sure you would agree with this, is I think you hear us having a dialogue and me saying things that would be considered offensive, but we're still friends. We still talk. We still get together and do this. Our relationship is stronger. I'm a better person because of this podcast and having these conversations. Because really, we're just having, we've had 15 hours of conversation about you transitioning.
Yeah.
And I learned a ton. And it helped you because you were able to kind of get this off your chest. And do that with your trans friends. Do that with your spouse. Not even a trans thing. Anybody.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's and not being afraid to say things. And just like you said, honesty. Honesty means no filter. That's what that means.
Right.
And it's been amazing. And I mean, back to a very specific kind of trans problem, not necessarily. I mean, you could understand this too with body image issues and showing your body to somebody else in an intimate way. And it's a lot of...
That fear's gone, by the way. I walk around my apartment naked with all the windows open. I'm like, hi, everybody.
Well, I know where I'll be parking my car tonight. But... yeah, there's going to be naked pictures of Chris on the internet tomorrow, and I mean, there's naked pictures of me all over the internet. But I've a lot of trans people have serious issues with their genitals,
right?
And that's a huge source of dysphoria for people. Then other people have serious problems with their genitals and ignore it,
as in things like deform, or is they just hate that they want to be a woman and that they have a penis?
Right. Is that knowing it being there is a problem.
Gotcha.
Knowing that even if they have this super masculine body, that particular part signifies no matter what. That's who they used to be. And that's
right.
they see sometimes that that's still who they are, and they can't stand it.
So let's break that down. What is the concern? Is it because of judgment that they're going to go to a bar, pick up a guy, go back, and then all of a sudden, surprise, I'm trans? I mean, or is it
a little bit? But that can be part of it. But the main part is that it's just like with me and creating personas, not letting people in.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to show off that. Like, you don't want to show somebody that because that's not who you are. I mean, this is the whole thing where your body doesn't match what your mind says should be there.
Okay, I get it. I have terrible stretch marks from being chubby, like to the point that when I was in high school, they tested me for giganticism because they were so rapid. I mean, and so I've, until last year, had never taken my shirt off in public since high school. But it's that because I was ashamed and embarrassed that my body was disformed in that way. But it's the same thing on a much
grander scale.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
there's people that they self-mutilate. They find out that they can't afford a surgery, or they're not lucky enough to have a job that covers it with insurance or anything else. And that daunting realization that you might not be able to fix the one thing that prevents you from looking at yourself and being okay with what you see, or even the feeling. You can't get intimate with people. You can't get close to people. There's issues where even for some trans women, getting erect, being aroused is disgusting and repulsive, and they hate themselves for it. And it could be vice versa for trans guys, being aroused and having breasts and that sensitive skin and how they feel and everything else. And that no matter what in the world might be right, if you feel that, and that's the real source of your dysphoria, you're done. You're shut down. Nothing in life matters anymore except that pain, and that's all you feel. And it drags you down to the darkest pits of your being and won't let you go. And that's scary. And I'd seen that. And I'd known about that before I transitioned. And I did my best to not have that, to try to ignore that I didn't need that I was okay with being okay with my body, that, some women have penises and some men have vaginas type saying thing. And why that is okay, and some people are okay with it. Trying to force yourself to be okay with it just because you might not be able to get the surgery, or you don't know what it's going to be like after the surgery, or you're scared of this, you're scared of that, you can't afford it, you know, all these things. And that's tough. That's a tough spot to be in. You allow yourself to feel these emotions and try to get to the bottom of them as you're doing it with everything else. But it can be so consuming. It can be the absolute end of you. Mm-hmm. It can take one moment of being triggered. An actual psychological breakdown trigger. Yeah. And I'd never seen one in person before until recently. And that was...
One what?
A breakdown.
Okay, all right.
And it seemed so innocent what caused it, and it wasn't. And it was so big, and it was so violently scary. Yeah. It was, and that scared me into not wanting to think about that, to think about, if I allow myself to get in touch with these thoughts and feelings, am I going to be like that? Am I going to be scared of this? And then you add on to that, am I not going to be able to be intimate with my wife? Am I not going to be able to do things? But then on the flip side, you can cope, you can get through that, and you have to have that understanding. You have to go there, or you'll never be whole. And it's been a struggle, and I've started trying to allow myself to get back into that and think about that. And I think, like, I'd had my fingers smashed off, and I was stuck with my fingers bleeding, crushed, bleeding, pulling up all over the ground for half an hour. And I still have nightmares about that. But 2 weeks later, I still had Emily drive me to Detroit to get an orchiectomy. Orchie.
Your balls got cut off.
Yeah, testes removed. And even with all the pain I was in, my brain wasn't even functioning with the amount of pain I was having from my fingers being cut off. And that trauma from that event, but I still had to go. I had to go get surgery, like the second surgery I've ever had in my life.
Right.
And I had to try to eat, but I still never went back and revisited the fact that I don't like losing things. I don't like loss. I don't like making mistakes. I don't like giving up anything. And sometimes big changes are hard. But I've felt a sense of peace ever since that surgery of they're gone. Mm-hmm. That poison's no longer going through my veins. That thing is no longer there. But I stopped. I stopped and didn't allow myself to go to think about, what about the other half of that equation? What about that?
Your penis.
And penis. And for anyone to note that not all trans people, even if they still have the stick and twig or the
penis.
The penis.
You can say penis. It's okay.
Well, I'm trying to say something else because it's always appropriate to ask how people like to have it referred to.
Okay.
Because it is a very big thing, and
sure.
And unless you see somebody go through that, if you've never seen somebody go through a nervous breakdown or breakdown, there's a thing to being PC and all that stuff, but there's also saying if you're at a friend or somebody else, why hurt somebody? Why take the risk to really, really hurt somebody? It's not like I'm not going to, like, I feel bad for all the times I've called you a fat ass and hey, you fatty and stuff like that, because that's a huge thing to you. And while you might be coming okay with it, what about if you're having a bad day and I say that to you?
Yeah.
That could end your life. A good friend picking on you like that, if you're in a super low place, you never know.
I think it's but I think it's different in this situation where that's the medical term, and we're in a discussion about this, though.
Right, no,
correct?
For now, but I want to point out that if people are going to talk to a trans person or try to get intimate with a trans person, it doesn't hurt to ask. It doesn't hurt to care about somebody. It doesn't. I know everyone's against PC and let's go brutalist, but
it's a selfish thing that you have to be, well, this is what I think, and that's just, they need to accept it because I'm a truth teller and this is the way it is.
Right.
Fuck yourself. You're a cunt.
But going on is that it's daunting. It's scary for such a big thing to be maybe a huge part of you that you want to get rid of. And I mean, there was a video of one of the ways of the surgery of happening going around and stuff like that, and it's frightening, and it's scary to think that if I allow myself to go down this road and I hate my penis and I don't want it there, and I allow myself to get there, what next?
Sure.
I have no idea.
Right.
I have none. I don't have tens of thousands of dollars, and I don't want to be a cheapskate and go to like a cheap person and like a not a good surgeon.
Yeah, because that's a disaster.
And then it comes to the idea of pleasure. I don't know if I talked about this last time. I don't know if I had surgery yet, but as far as orgasms and feeling and sex and everything else, hormones do a lot to affect that. A lot. Like one of the first things. It depends. It's by person. For me, hormones were great. For me, after surgery was super fantastic. But one of the first things I noticed, I guess, and a lot of other people do, is the first thing you really lose on hormones is morning wood. You don't get erect every randomly. You start losing that. I gotta stick my dick in something right now, or the world's gonna end.
Yeah, I'm 32. I'm hitting that.
Yeah, and it's not bad.
Sure.
You start. Like nerve endings explode all over your body. You start getting more. You have more sensitive skin. You develop more erogenous zones. After my surgery, and I've been an idiot and played fast and loose with how I take hormones.
Yeah.
On and off, on and off, on and off. And I think that's part of my problem. Please, for the love of God, if you can't consistently take hormones, don't even start. Best part of advice ever is if you can't consistently take them, don't start until you can. But after the ball removal service happened,
just
sex drive died.
Right.
At first, it completely died. Plus, I was hooked on painkillers. Thanks, doctors, for prescribing me so many. And I spent a long time not wanting to have sex, not wanting to do any of that. Everything had changed. Most male orgasms, they're explosive. There's this build-up, it explodes, and then you kind of feel empty, and you feel like, okay, I'm done. Okay, bye.
Right.
But recently, especially with, being good on doses on hormones and starting to accept these feelings, I had sex like 5 times in a couple hours.
Wow.
And I know this is graphic and everything else is a lot of information. I don't give a shit. But I'd stayed hard for like 2 hours.
Right.
Which back when I was 15, that would have been fine. Mid-20s, a little bit harder for 2 hours while doing stuff, but I never actually orgasmed. And it was the best sex I've ever had.
Right.
And I felt in my entire body that explosion that guys have, that when you orgasm and you feel all the fluids coming out, that pulsing. I felt that for hours after, during and after, through my entire body.
Where can I get these hormones? I'm thinking about becoming trans.
It was pretty incredible. But it was a mental block I'd had that I didn't care about sex. I hadn't really been liking it. It was just meh. And now I've got this passion back, and I was afraid for a while to be super passionate during sex because it's like, that's who I used to be. I used to be just absolutely animalistic in sex, just destroyed the people that came across my path. And I wasn't bad, but I was scared of, how does Miah have sex? How does Miah enjoy sex? And I think I've found this balance. I found the desire for it again. And for the point of that whole spiel there of sharing things that I didn't think I'd ever say while live streaming and on a recorded podcast, is that I think now I'm okay with the idea of having GCS, gender confirmation surgery, or whatever the fuck they're calling it nowadays.
Right.
And that a lot of people are scared, like, what's it like afterwards? What's the orgasm like? And a lot of people go from penis and testes on like testosterone blocker and everything else into that surgery, versus that's a huge jump.
Right.
Hormones can only do so much. You don't lose a lot of that big explosion. I didn't. I try to masturbate every once in a while just to get a gauge on things, make sure everything keeps working, and just to kind of flesh things out. Like, especially afterwards, I'm like, what's going to come out now? What is it? Just like dust or something? No, I mean, so
Well,
there's like sperm and semen, and then there's like the seminal fluid.
Yeah, it's the
you
fluid.
still have the fluid.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a lot, sometimes it's not. It's whatever. But
Yeah. For our lady listeners out there, it just depends on when was the last time and how often, and
But there's not this buildup anymore,
Right.
Like, and you don't get blue balls if you don't have balls, and that's a weird thing to think about. Is like you don't have this pent up like, ugh. But going from hormones that changed a lot, that decreased, erection times, decreased or increased pleasure, decreased the amount of fluids that came out, to having no balls, losing a lot of that stuff, and then feeling that. I am 100% down for knowing that I can get that and better if I had the surgery. Because as it stands now, it's weird to think about, and especially for heterosexual guys, to ever think about being penetrated, feeling good. Like, there is this desire, like, even when I'm having sex, I sometimes fantasize about, I'm not the one with the penis here.
Sure.
And I know a lot of trans people do that. And, trans guys will, especially with the prosthetics they have now and everything else.
Get pegged.
Right. And it's one thing to be, have anal sex. Mm-hmm. But it's not complete. It's not that what's...
Yeah.
Especially all in society, like, now you're a woman after a woman loses her virginity, and you've reached womanhood now, and everything else like that. But for trans people, I've never been fucked.
Right.
So am I a woman still? It's that struggle, that disconnect there of like, I'm not going to ever feel like a real, like, the scary part is I'll never feel like a real woman unless I have a vagina. Mm-hmm. And they're getting really good at crafting them and making them awesome. And like, they can grow, like, they scrape off the inside of your like cheeks or something, and like they can grow skin grafts that actually like salivate, I guess, and technically get wet. And
wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's
That's
getting
a whole
advanced.
situation.
Yeah, well, and they just did the first uterus transplant, like, ever.
Yeah, it failed.
But that was, hey, if they thought they could get away with it in the first place, me and some other trans fans, we talk like, one day we're gonna be able to have kids. I think in our lifetime.
That'd be hilarious and awesome.
Because they can grow. I mean, they're getting really good with adult stem cell research and growing 3D printing frames in the labs. And I don't want to get into that right now, but it's. And I know this has been everywhere today, but it's the first time back. And there's a lot to catch up on.
There's a consistency.
Yeah,
but so you would consider, as Rush Limbaugh calls it, a chop-a-dick-a-dectomy?
Well, they don't actually chop it off. Everything stays.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, they just peel it and morph it and repackage it.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's all the exact same bits. Men and women are the exact same people. It's just things came out in different places and some things fused together. Like, your scrotum is literally
That's why you have the line down the middle of your scrotum.
Yeah,
is because that was where your...
Well, I have like a plus side now. It's almost like a cross. But...
Right, and women, your clit was the beginnings of a penis.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, we're short on time, but I want to get into Caitlyn Jenner because we haven't talked about it, but I would say, knowing you and having watched Caitlyn Jenner and having gone through this experience with you, her transition to womanhood has been real fast and real quick, and it's because she has a lot of money.
No, she's been doing this for years. Years ago, they had tabloids like Caitlyn, or I guess the headline, Bruce Jenner getting plastic surgery, Bruce Jenner not having any hair on his body, all this stuff. Those were the headlines in these tabloid magazines, but nobody really noticed it.
Yeah.
She has been building on this for years.
But also it comes down to the fact that she's a member of a celebrated family in terms of media, and she has a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I also would say that when we did this podcast in 2013, there was shame around it in terms of how people reacted to us.
Yeah.
And you were not largely accepted by most people. I was surprised that you were accepted at all.
Yeah.
But because of, and you look at what happened to Chaz Bono. Chaz was really the laughingstock. Caitlyn Jenner has not been a laughingstock.
No.
I mean, to certain portions, but by and large, Caitlyn Jenner has been celebrated and has brought trans issues mainstream to the point that Democratic legislators here in Indiana, when they were considering passing some LGBT protections, they were just going to pass it for LGB, but no T, and Democratic lawmakers flat out wouldn't vote for it because of that.
Yeah.
That would have been, you would have been thrown, we talked in past episodes about how you would have been thrown under the bus as a trans person by the LGB community for them to make progress.
Right.
And I think that Caitlyn Jenner has been a defining cultural moment for trans people in terms of getting society comfortable with the idea and seeing that she is a perfectly normal human being, although part of the Kardashians, who knows? I mean,
the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Okay.
And that's what this is with her. She does not represent even a fraction of the cross-section of the trans community.
Okay.
I know most trans people absolutely are terrified that she's being considered a spokesperson for the trans community. Laverne Cox, amazing. An amazing woman.
From Orange is the New Black.
Orange is the New Black.
Right.
Soon to be playing, I guess, Dr. Frankenfurter in a new 4TV Rocky Horror Picture Show. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but okay, whatever. You know, Dr. Frankenfurter was perfect when he first came out way years ago. Okay. But her and then, I want to say Carmen Carrera, but I don't know if that's right. But there have been, there was just a guy in Germany, a trans guy that was on the cover of a men's health magazine. A gay men's health magazine, I believe. Maybe there's two different magazines. I'm getting confused. But there's all these people. There's been Buck Angel out there for years as a trans guy. There's been a lot of the porn stars in the trans community, especially like Bailey J., who started out as a trap on 4chan and has turned, kind of have created her own little media empire. She's saying stuff and kind of coming out there. And the media just took the easy target they were already covering. And they put this person up there that's old, that's rich and so out of touch with any cross-section of the United States. There's no one that can relate to the Kardashians.
Or Bruce Jenner. I mean, Bruce Jenner was an Olympic athlete in the 70s and never had to work again. And I just uploaded to, I work for Bob and Tom, which is a major national radio show. We had a TV show at one time and Bruce Jenner was on talking about the beginning of the Kardashians, and I just put it up on our YouTube. And you just hear him at that time talking about his life, and it was so far from, like, reality of what most people deal with. And I just started following Kylie Jenner on Snapchat just to see what it was like. And, like, it's her walking out to decide if she's going to drive the Land Rover, the Range Rover, the Ferrari, the 2 Rolls Royce. She went with the aluminum Rolls Royce, which there's probably been, like, 10 of those made.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, her life is so far from what normal people's lives are like.
But so she goes, like, and then the whole debacle with that awards ceremony that everyone was pissed off about and finding out that was a sham. And they paid each other off.
The Woman of the Year thing?
Yeah. That was all a sham.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Google that, and it was all backdoor crap. But still, she can't talk to trans issues. She can't. Like, she might understand some, and being trans is a horrible thing, and so she might have some sort of struggle, but she's so far removed from the reality of most trans people that are almost homeless, that are constantly in fear for their lives, that they're afraid to come out because they'll lose their job, which means they lose their home, which means they can't go out to a bar because they'll get beat. She can't understand that. She can't even begin to speak for that.
How do you know that, though? How do you know that she? I think what she did was courageous because she came out and spoke her truth.
Well, no, that's fine.
Which is potentially making herself the cultural laughingstock. I mean, and is the butt of a lot of jokes. You're not the butt of jokes. You're not laughed at by all of society for being a horrible freak. And
but I don't
directly in your face.
But
there's you know what I mean?
There is that. But that's part of being a celebrity. She put herself in that position to be a celebrity, and she's capitalized. She made a TV show. But there's somebody that was a much better representation of the cross section of trans people, yet still famous. And it was, oh wow, why can't I think of names? Laura Jane Grace, lead singer of Against Me, a punk rock band.
Never heard of it.
She was on the cover of Rolling Stone for coming out. no one knows who Laura Jane Grace is, but she's sitting there and she doesn't change her voice when she sings in her same voice.
Right.
And she goes out there and she's dressed more feminine. She wears a little makeup, I guess, more than she did as a punk rocker on stage. But her courage, her courageous, she's not this super absolutely feminine trans person. And she's still out there with her same fan base, having the punk rock scene fight off fans that are talking shit. That should have been the main storyline. And we as a society should go, yeah, Caitlyn Jenner's brave. Yeah, whatever. Okay. But look at Laura Jane Grace. Look at the Wachowskis, or how I don't know how.
Yeah, congratulations. You guys got another one.
Yeah. Well, in the worst way possible, that she was going to be outed by the media if she didn't come out herself. She had to come out when she didn't want to.
Right.
And there's been a lot of stories like that before, of people being forcefully outed in the worst way possible.
I mean, Caitlyn Jenner was kind of part of that.
Yeah.
Caitlyn Jenner, like you said, for years. But I feel like you're not giving... listen, does it piss me off that the Kardashians and Caitlyn Jenner are the thing that people are attracted to, and they're the ones that sell? Okay? They are popular because we buy that shit. They are popular because they can build an audience. They, fame and celebrity really are just a myth.
Yeah,
but they are of cultural interest.
Yeah,
and while you may not like it, and I may not like the fact that the Kardashians stand for hollow popularity.
Everything wrong with society.
There is nothing there. There is nothing. It's just loving wealth. And that wealth was built on nothing. It was built on a sex tape. Because she was the private assistant to Paris Hilton, who couldn't be a bigger dolt. But if we can get anything good out of the Kardashians' ability to garner an audience, it is that people are more comfortable talking about trans issues, is it not?
No. Because they're talking about them wrong. That's why I was saying earlier, why aren't you pretty? Why aren't you a pretty woman? You've been transitioning for 4 years. Caitlyn Jenner's only been out for 2. Why aren't you pretty? You're ugly. You're not a real trans person. And that sort of talk about being a true trans person has been brought back in the spotlight because of her in a conversation she started. When it comes to things like this and real issues for really changing society and making improvements, there is bad press. There is, because we were building, trans people were getting press. They were getting good press with very good representatives, and it wasn't this flashy, look, trans people are now the end of a joke, the butt of a joke for entertainment purposes. That's what this is. It's not, let's have a discussion, let's be entertained. We have, the one of my trans friends just got me to start watching Sense8, which is by the Wachowski sisters.
Right.
And it's amazing. Now, that has a trans woman in it. And she plays a trans woman. And it's an amazing show, and it shows a lot of things, like stuff through media like that. But we were building stuff like everyone attacks Miley Cyrus, and they had the opportunity to do some good messaging with what Miley Cyrus has been doing. If you ever look it up, you have to look up, because you probably actually like some of this music, is look up Miley Cyrus's Backyard Sessions on YouTube.
Okay.
What a beautiful set of things. Brought in Laura Jane Grace to do a couple songs. I want everyone to go out and listen to Against Me's newer album, the True Trans Rebel. And it's a punk rock album about being trans and some of the issues and stuff. But there's all this other stuff we could pick up and use. But we just followed the media's lead again. When was the media ever done anything good? They twist and distort everything.
I don't know. That Edward Snowden reporting was pretty decent.
Well, I think they were afraid at that point, because Edward Snowden might have had some information on them that he would have used against them if they didn't do well. But we have to hold people accountable. We have to hold our society accountable a little bit, don't we? If we want to improve it. We have to stop buying into what we're being fed and make our own media, which I think a lot of people are doing. GLAAD's been doing a very good job about trying to get these reporting agencies to report correctly on trans people, when to gender them, when to use names and everything else, and that's fine. And it might seem PC or SJW. It's a pendulum. We're going to swing hard one way, and then we're gonna find a nice middle ground.
Well, that's part of my problem with social justice warriors, is what SJW stands for. Is that a lot of extremists, yes, they push the envelope and raise issues and get people to focus on things like a Bernie Sanders is pushing Hillary Clinton to talk about things that she probably wouldn't have. But at the same time, some of these people take social justice and political correctness to such ridiculous levels that then people are willing to just write off political correctness altogether. When political correctness is not about being uber sensitive, it really comes down to just treating people with respect.
Right.
There's Miah is a human being and deserves to be treated like a human being and does deserve some level of respect. She has chosen to be referred to as she, and you're just a shit human if you don't go by that. Just because
you're Ed Coleman.
Yeah, you really. I mean, if you don't, that's very true. Just because you don't agree with Miah's lifestyle, it does not mean that you get the right to treat Miah as less than human being. Because you know what? That makes you a shit human being, and you just start losing people. It's the exact opposite of what we began with, which is authenticity, openness, and honesty.
Right.
Respect.
Right.
That's love.
And I think this whole SJW movement, this leftist thing, and everyone wanting to do everything it takes to defeat the leftists, it's part of that pendulum. It's that swing. Look at the 40s and the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Look at the conservative, look at the 70s and 80s, and with the conservative movement of controlling all of your actions. Think of half the laws we have on the books right now are controlling how you think, how you feel, how you interact with people. Mm-hmm. We've had PC police and SJWs. It was for the longest while, it was the Christian right.
Right.
So what's the difference? There is none, and I think we need to stop focusing on picking sides and just, like you said, focus on treating other human beings like fucking human beings for once in society. Stop judging everybody and have to control everybody. We don't need special rights. We don't need special protection bills. Let's just let humanity be. But that's why Caitlyn Jenner infuriates me so much, because it's so myopic on a cross-section of a group of people that are struggling right now, we're looking at having bills passed on being thrown in jail for using the wrong restroom, according to somebody else.
Right.
We're being called pedophiles and child molesters for just being who we are. And that's a dangerous, very dangerous precedent.
Sure.
That's where you incite hatred and anger and say it's okay. The KKK, look at what they got away with, hanging people and passing laws against entire cross-sections of people for just who they're being born as. The same thing's happening now, that we're saying it's okay and holding up people saying that we're going to beat up trannies in the bathroom. And, if I see you in the bathroom with my kid, I'm going to kill you. And people are saying that's okay. And then lawmakers are turning around and say, we agree with you. We're going to make laws that help reinforce that. We're going to send men with guns in the bathrooms and pull people out. And that's frightening, because we know what political rhetoric can do to a society. Mm-hmm. We've all seen, especially people in the political world, we've seen the damage that does. We're watching that happening right now in the Middle East and 8 different countries that are burning to the ground right now.
I'm sorry, but Donald Trump does bear some responsibility for the violence at his rallies. He gives permission to people to do that. Yes, every individual is open to make their own choices. But
it's different when it's supporting someone that could potentially be the leader of the strongest country in the world and enforce his thoughts and opinions into law and convince his followers to also vote for people that will put their beliefs into law. We're not dealing with just somebody, me and you, on a podcast. We're dealing with people can actually use force and violence to get their way.
Yeah.
And that's frightening. He said at his rally when those people were being pulled out that, he was joking around about, it's a shame. We used to, now we're all PC and we have to be nice and no one gets hurt anymore. And those protesters know that. But that, he said that's going to change. That if you protest him or you protest, he wants people, and everyone was cheering that we should use violence and rage against people that are standing up for themselves, because they're not standing up against him. They're standing up for themselves, because it's frightening to see where some of these people are going. We're looking at Cantwell and the whole brutalist movement going, let's support a president that's going to kill off these people we don't like. They're basically praying for genocide. They just haven't admitted that, really.
Right.
And being trans and having so many death threats sent at me because of that, and watching, I don't know how many, I can't know the number, but I know it's 10 plus already this year, trans women have been killed, murdered. And they don't report on it right. They don't. They report on Caitlyn Jenner, make sure they get her pronouns right. But that poor black girl that got killed down in Georgia, who knows what her name actually is? Who knows where she was transitioning because it was reported so poorly that no one sees that struggle. And that's it's a big thing, and I think. And that's why I'm glad to be sitting here again doing this, because I think things need to have better context put to them. I think a lot of issues aren't being talked about the way they're supposed to. Either you got one side saying, I don't care, you're all dirty trannies and you need to be in a mental institution. And you have the other side that says, we're special snowflakes, you're not allowed to say anything that might offend us. Like the bill that went through some of the legislature in New York, basically making it fine to misgender somebody. We've got these extremes, and you get these laws like that protect us, but makes these people hate us even more.
Right.
And it's, on top of all that, you have the internal struggle of just trying not to kill yourself every day.
Sure.
Of trying to find a way to have a stable home, have friends, feel love, make connections, make money to afford things that can improve your life. Surgeries, hormones, doctors. Some people don't even have doctors within 100 miles of them that they can go to. Some people don't have therapists within 100-some-odd miles of them to go and talk to about these trans issues. They just did a study of a whole bunch of endocrinologists that deal with hormones, and like 63% of them said they were uncomfortable dealing with trans patients. It's not that difficult from an endocrinology standpoint. It's hormones. You take blood tests, you test everything else out, you make sure everyone's healthy, and then you prescribe the dosage. You get a letter from a therapist. Therapist said this person's mentally healthy and can handle this. But nobody knows about that. Nobody talks about that.
Lady Laurie says, Miah is love. Miah is life.
Thanks. I'll see you in a minute. Slap you.
Oh, okay. All right.
I know who that is.
Yeah.
And I can't say it, so
we have to wrap up. My final thought, and then I'll give you the final word, is that all those people that you thought about apologizing to, do it. When you're going through, like a lot of what I've gone through is recovery for codependency, and a lot of a lot of it is modeled after the 12 steps of AA, which are pretty useful, even for a codependent. I would recommend, and I have found that as I have gone and apologized to people and made amends, it has rebuilt those relationships. It has, there's one very special person in my life that I don't talk to anymore, and I've apologized, and we're just never going to be friends again. I mean, and I've become okay with that, and it's just because of the way I acted, because I was just a total beta codependent, and can't deal with the fact that she wasn't giving me what I wanted. But at least that weight is off my shoulders. I don't have that obsession on should I apologize or not. How do I make contact with them again? The door's open. There's openness. She can contact me. I can contact her. And every other person in my life, I've apologized to, because listen, I now understand that this thing the way that I thought was harmful. I'm sorry that I was resentful, passive aggressive, terrible. And by doing that, your life is a lot better. Like, you really will benefit a lot from apologizing and having conversations with the people in your life that you should have those conversations with. Yeah. Because relationships are repairable, and there isn't anything in life in terms of human behavior. And I just tell myself this all the time because I am such a catastrophic thinker. Everything is black and white, doom or gloom. Everything is, this has happened, my life is over. This person will never speak to me again, blah, blah, blah. Nothing is irrevocable. Everything is changeable. Everything can be better. There isn't anything in life that is permanently shit, as long as you're willing to admit fault and work through it. So, and I'm really proud of you for kind of seeing the light and having that awakening, and it's a great time. It is, it just gets better from here. 6 months out from where I was, my life is the best it's ever been because I'm not so obsessed with all that bull crap. I'm just waking up every day and being me and Some people have a real problem with it, but I just that doesn't affect me anymore. So, good job. So,
well, thank you.
The final word is yours.
Well, I guess I would start off somewhere and apologizing to you.
Not accepted.
Okay,
get out.
Yeah,
just kidding.
I'm the one with the gun here.
Thank you
and I just fixed your furnace for you. So, yeah, the first thing that happened when I got here is Chris is like, I don't think my air conditioning is working. So I spent 15 minutes explaining to him how to operate his.
I'm a fat man. I need air conditioning.
I understand. It's really hot in here.
It is.
I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I would like anyone that listens to this, anyone that was watching, somehow find a way to communicate to me and Chris that you would like more.
Spangle at wearelibertarians.com, or you can send Miah Facebook messages on whichever of her pages.
It happens not to be blocked at the time.
Spangle, and it's on the website too. My email address at wearelibertarians.com. So get in touch there.
Share this. Talk to your friends about it, and I don't say that because I want this to be a big thing, I kind of do in a way, but I've had an untold amount of people that doesn't matter how long it's been since they've listened or whatever, say that this has helped somehow. This podcast has educated them, has shown them information, and I think we have a very unique way of conveying that information with this style of podcast, with how we both are. We're good at this, communicating back and forth and drawing out information. I think it's a great way to do it, and I don't see a lot of that. Still to this day, I see these media things and these extreme sides, and I'd like to know if people want more of this, because I'd love to do more of this. Bug the living crap out of you coming down here and destroying your house maybe a little bit more. But,
it doesn't bother me, just as long as you learn to behave.
Oh, that's a long struggle right there. But no, I hope anyone that listened to this definitely enjoyed it, and maybe it helps. Maybe it helps you understand something. And yeah,
All right. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Creating Miah, the first in the second series, because there's been a year or two in between, so we're just going to kind of separate it out. Go and check back in the feed. Share this if you've gotten something out of it. I don't think you have to. It's not about trans. It's about life. This entire podcast has been that way and will continue to be something that you will get a lot out of, even if you're not a trans person or know a trans person, in my opinion. So feel free to share, and go to iTunes or Google Play and rate and review. That is really important. And rate 5 stars. Otherwise, don't rate and review at all.
Yeah.
That is also how you can help grow. So you can get in touch with Miah at Miah_Axton on Twitter, or you can look her up on Facebook. Both are linked on the go to wearelibertarians.com. Scroll down on the sidebar where you see the podcast. Hit Learn More. I've got how you can contact Miah there. Thank you for listening to this episode of Creating Miah. We'll see you very soon.